Welcome back, Mitch.
Yo, Keith.
How are you today?
No, I'm all right. Yourself?
I can't.
The sun came up
sun
today.
and it's beautiful outside.
It's been questionable whether it still existed the last several days.
Lots of clouds.
Kind of gets brighter, but never actually see it.
Yeah. And you know what? I think sometimes we need the days of clouds and rain to enjoy the sun again.
That's true. Perspective.
Right? It's almost like we sometimes dismiss the sun on the sunny days.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we just
don't
appreciate it. We don't appreciate it as much. Which reminds me of a really great question for you.
All right.
When have you been surprised by something or someone that you maybe dismissed, like the sun? Like, so you're out and about, you're doing your thing, and maybe you dismiss someone or their thought or, whatever, and then turns out it was actually a really good idea or a really good person.
Man,
and you kind of dismissed
I think that's happened so many times that I've been like, that's a terrible idea. Boy, that worked out, didn't it?
Well, that worked out.
I don't know. Podcasting.
Oh, it's still a terrible idea.
It's a terrible idea. I don't know. It seems to be working out. Wow. I don't know. Do you got something?
I will say, and I'm struggling to think of a specific instance per se, but I do know a lot with work, and we were just talking about this in this job, but in previous jobs, when you get entwined in work for say a decade, right, or 2 decades, right, and you get a new employee and they come in and they go, "Hey, we should try this," and you're yeah, I tried that 5 years ago, doesn't work, right? I do remember a couple occasions where I had to I realized that just taps down some people's energy, especially from a newer employee. And so sometimes you have to let them try it, let them fail at it, and then
or succeed.
And it's happened where
when times have changed.
Yeah. And so there's been some times that I remember that I tried that 5 years ago, but hey, yeah, go for it, and it worked, right? And I do think about that sometimes where situational stuff changes. Either people change or society changes, or just your environment around you change. And so what you tried even a year ago or 2 years ago and it didn't work, sometimes comes back and works incredibly well, and you're kind of surprised by it, right? So I think about that a lot. I think about there's this story that I was told early on in my career, right? And it was from one of our managers, and he used to work in a jewelry store, right? And he worked in this jewelry store, and this guy comes in, and he's in overalls covered in oil, white t-shirt, overall covered in oil, hair's all, kind of conglobbered, around or whatever. It looks like he's been working on a car for the past century, right? And all the other salespeople were ignoring him and only talking to the other people in the store. So he goes up there and, he's like, "Hey, you looking for something?" He's like, "Yeah, I forgot my wife's anniversary, and I need to get a gift or whatever." Well, then, talking to him, guy ends up spending like $50,000 on a pair of earrings, right? And he was the CEO of some big company, and he was working on his Model T Ford, car, and realized that it was his anniversary, and jumped in his other car, went up there and spent $50,000, right? And so that story always kind of stuck with me a lot in terms of you just never really judge what somebody looks like in business, right? And I think that's probably a really good life lesson beyond business too. So I think about that story a lot.
I think don't underestimate anybody on the baseball field too. I haven't talked about baseball in a while. But man, this weekend I saw maybe the smallest kid on a team hit a missile that bounced off the fence. And you're like, I don't know right? Like, I don't know how that happened, but, this wasn't even I didn't know, I don't know the history. It was I was watching a game while I was waiting for the game. I was there to watch to start, right? So I don't know any of these kids, right? I'm just watching, and did the pitcher underestimate the kid?
Yeah.
Did he just throw him a cookie, or had who knows?
Combination of everything.
Who knows what it was? But that kid rose to the occasion and hammered that ball.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's definitely, we're in this series. We're in the last week of the series. Sometimes it takes a woman to win it. And we're talking about Esther today. And Esther's kind of in this. It's a great read. If anybody's never read a book of the Bible, read Esther. It's a quick read. Some really great stuff in there. But Esther's kind of this, her parents have died. She's kind of an orphan. She gets kind of adopted by somebody in the family, right? Cousin, right? And
got a killer named Mordecai. Esther.
Esther and Mordecai.
There's good names in this. Xerxes,
really
right?
Good names.
I think Xerxes has been used in
plenty of stuff.
Well, because of period piece stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like,
anyway, so she
real dude.
She ends up becoming the queen in a basically a beauty pageant, to replace the last queen that made Xerxes upset. But anyway, so it's just a really great story about this this woman who really, society-wise, should be nothing, right? Orphaned, etc., ends up being the queen to a pretty not nice guy, and ends up, saving her people from annihilation and destruction, right? So it's a really great story. So it's really, about a person that we maybe look at as just she's just an orphan, she's just a this, just a that, but then it ends up doing really, really big things, right? So in this story, have you ever felt like that, where you were just whatever, right? Like just a peon just a cog in the wheel of things. Have you ever felt that way before?
Yeah, all the time. Like
right now,
like just, but I think because the great traditions of biblical teaching and experiences with the church and a relationship with Christ and all this stuff I got going for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Baseball reference, very much born on third base situation, right? Makes it easier, my faith in the providence of God, and it's easier for me to have it than for Esther, right? Like nothing's been great, ever, right?
Yeah.
And she faces this very real, it's just her life's on line. She can just go up to the king and be like, "Hey, king, there's a plot to wipe out my people that would be, people who've looked out for you.
Yeah.
And there's this plot to wipe them out." And he could have been like, "Oh, I didn't know you were one of those people. Yeah, we're wiping them out."
Yeah, that sucks for you. Yeah.
And
because he literally just got rid of the old queen, on a whim, right?
So the thing opens with a disposable queen motif to it. And I've never been called to at that scale or level, but I think what it helps and teaches us is to recognize, like we've talked before, that being exactly the right size for the situation, and recognizing that we can always be called upon to be exactly right sized for the situation we're in, and maybe we're the right sized person for the time that we're being called into action.
Mm-hmm.
So to have confidence in our actions towards being confident in our actions, responding to God's call in our life is what my takeaway from it is. So, like I'm, leading some youth ministry right now. I'm not, what in my history of past would be like, oh, that'll that's
out.
leading to that, right?
Sure.
So there's nothing in Esther's timeline storyline that said, oh, naturally
you're going to be a hero.
Naturally, yeah, you were made for the time such as this, right?
Yeah.
Of course, Esther was the hero, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
well, otherwise we probably wouldn't be telling the story,
right? Exactly.
So I take a different look at it too, and I agree with what you're saying, but I look at it as I think, and if you haven't been in this position in life, you probably will at some point. But there's times in life where you're at this crossroad, and you need to make a decision. You need to do something, and that doing something, you're potentially going to harm yourself or others around you rapidly, right? And if you don't do it, you can be safe for a little while, right? And the brave thing to do is to do the thing, but it takes so much effort, right, to cross that, because we seek naturally, I think, as humans, safety and security.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so we, like in this story, Esther could have just been
resist survival instinct.
This sucks for you guys. I'm not telling them I'm with you, and I'll keep surviving, right? And that would be the easy thing to do, and the kind of the human instinct. But to resist that, and to say, oh gosh, now I can do this, and this might backfire a lot, but I'm going to do it because it's what long term needs to be done. That's what I take from it, right? And I can draw parallels and correlations in my life of being right at that crossroad. Now, nothing like what Esther had to deal with, right? But being at that crossroad and realizing this is what I need to do, but it's so much safer if I just status quo it for a little while longer, right? And that may be for people listening. That may be a job change. That may be a relationship issue. It may be a lot of different things, but a lot of times it's easier just to maintain that status quo, just keep trucking along, than to make that change. And that's really what I take from the story more than anything else, is that bravery to do the change, right, rather than just keeping it going.
Yeah, that's
such an unlikely person. Is, God uses unlikely people in a lot of situations to inspire, to either do His will, but to also inspire people for generations to come. So obviously, we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but so there's this plot, and the king's kind of part of it, or at least acknowledges that it's okay to just wipe out her people, all these people. And so Esther approaches the king and basically asks for their safety, right? And the king grants it. So really stepping out in faith that it's going to work out for her despite these potential consequences, because king's kind of a hothead, right?
Yeah.
And so when have you looked at a situation like that? When have you seen someone else or yourself have this, situation where they had to step out into faith and just do it despite these immediate potential consequences for it?
Yeah, I think we see this in our modern culture some with just not standing by and seeing somebody be, when somebody's marginalized, just saying, hey, it's okay that you're not having the average experience, but I see you, I respect you, you exist, you're a person, you have those unalienable human rights. And I think, at like a youth level, I think, we've talked a lot, it's like kind of covert bullying that like exists in the world, right? And people feel small, and I think there's so much power in being present. So we talk in the youth stuff about kids just being present with others. Use your empathy. If you see somebody feeling small, your presence matters. Your presence says you're more than what you think they're saying about you or thinking about you, right?
Yeah.
And I think little stuff like that is stepping out in faith. And I don't want to, I know I'm using like lunchroom scenarios, but
yeah.
But it's huge when you're middle school, junior high school, lunchroom scenarios.
Yeah.
To your own reputation or status or lots of different slang words to describe your awesomeness, right? That I could throw in here that nobody listening.
Your vibe.
Yeah, your vibe, your aura, your is, like it's all in jeopardy by who you associate with, and so.
Yeah, and I think
our students have a great. They're called to rise to the occasion of sticking up for others, almost at a more concentrated. It's more concentrated at this time in their life than maybe those opportunities are for us. Your student life is one of the more diverse situations you're going to be in. You're forced into the confines of that institution, and you don't have a whole lot of agency in there on
Yeah, as an adult, you go to pick your friends. You pick who you hang out with.
You go to the school in the district you live in, and you go to the classes that you got signed up for, and you eat lunch at the time that assigned to you. And
I think a lot of that too starts in that 6th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade. I look at.
So I'm inspired by the students and their perseverance through these situations, and those are the stories that come to mind when we talk about stepping up in faith despite potential consequences.
Yeah, and I think to kind of follow and track with you too. I think sometimes kids, especially, because again, as an adult, you can mitigate a lot of it, but as a kid, it's hard. Following your passions and following your hobbies can make you lose a lot of status, right? And I think about, if you like to read as a kid, right? Nobody gets made fun of more than bookworms, right? People that like to read. If you don't like video games and you don't understand the video game references and stuff like that, right? Like there's a lot of things that you can do as a hobby that you're really into and you've got a lot of passion for that can get your status looked down upon, right? And so yeah, I think as a parent too, looking at kids, I try to teach my kids to just shut out the noise and to follow what they think is right, whatever their passion is, whatever their hobby is, whatever they want to do, to follow that and to do that regardless of what other people think about it, right? And I get that a lot with I get that a lot with one of my kiddos and reading and some of the hobbies that she gets, and she's like, not very. It's not frowned upon. It's just people look at it like that's weird. You like reading a book. You like reading books. That's weird. I only read books when the teacher tells me to, and I don't even do it at that, right? So yeah, I think I can see that a lot.
Kind of one of the things too, that stands out that, this is Old Testament story here, but we're, when you put it in this New Covenant context and this, and help us put our framework around, the concept that all persons are of sacred worth.
Yeah, especially around Esther, right? Like, it would be easy to look at Esther in that time in that society and say she's not really worth much.
Exactly. There's different value assigned to different people, and I think there's still plenty of places in the world today that people assign different value to different groups of people, and recognizing that as injustice, and recognizing that though you may not agree with viewpoints or stances that some people have, none of that changes the fact that they have a sacred worth. They're made by God, a beautiful creation of God, and they have that same value and worth to God that you have. And I think that can really increase empathy when you process the world through that lens.
And it's such a antithetical point to what society teaches you, right? The society teaches you that your worth is based off of how much money you make or where you live or, whatever these status symbols, where you got to go on vacation this year, all these different status symbols are what you're worth, right? And then to sit there and try to grasp that, I think it's easy for you to look at somebody that's a higher societal worth,
okay,
and be like, well, I'm just as equal as that person, right? And let's just take it from a wealth perspective.
Everybody wants the world to be equal as long as it's up.
Oh, as long as it's up, right? But then to look at somebody in our society whom society would deem as low, and to grasp this concept that they are just as equal to you and just as worthy. And it's not just a like, oh, everybody's equal on the but worthy, right? Like they have to, they're worthy of God's love equally and as much as you are worthy of it. To me is a hard concept, because society teaches us that that's not the case, right? Every person in power tries to teach you that that's not the case, right? And so for me, I think that's an eye-opening development throughout this story is not just listening to the story and being like, oh, that's great, but really understanding where Esther was in society and what society thought of her, and then what she could do living up to God's purpose is amazing to me, right? And I think it does change my worldview a little bit. And I hope that I can hold on to that for a little bit longer than in this conversation, right?
Wow. Yeah. That's what we can. That's what I love about these conversations is, to drill down, get into a scripture, look at inspiration from millennia ago, and have it have a real impact and change on our lives and how we process the world, and help us live into who we're called to be and created to be. Because you can't do that without intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you, Keith, for these conversations, because I think that intentionality is, you can't get there if you don't know where you're going.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, that's going to wrap up our series. And what a great series that we had. 3 women of the Bible that made such a massive impact, and that their stories still resonate today. So I appreciate everybody listening. Hopefully you made it this far. If you have, there's zero reason
to not mash that subscribe button.
Subscribe, leave a comment. Let us know what from the series maybe, or from this video, what you took from it, and we'll see you next time.